welcome to episode 214 of Cinematary. I'm your host, Zach Dennis, and I am here with
Jessica Carr
and Dilmore.
And in today's episode, we will be talking about movies that we saw this week. And in part 2, we will be concluding our Kelly Reichardt series with 2016's Certain Women. But let's go ahead.
Yay!
Yeah, it's very exciting. Now, we will also be announcing at the end of the podcast our October horror series list. So please stick around till then to hear that. We have some interesting titles, but we have a very cool event that's going to be happening. It'll be happening next weekend, but you guys will get to listen to it I believe the week after. I'm probably getting dates wrong. I'm very bad with that, but it's coming up soon. It's a very cool event. We'll talk about it at the end of the pod. Let's go ahead though and jump into our movies for this first part. And Dylan and Jessica, I'm going to lead off with you all. You saw a movie that I've seen a lot of people talking about kind of on the indie scene that came out this year. It's been on the festival circuit a little bit. It's called Madeline's Madeline.
Yeah, I was able to catch it at the Belcourt this weekend, the local kind of independent cinema around Nashville. And I say lucky, especially because it already seems like it came and went. It only had a week run, and that made me really sad because I almost feel like I need to watch it again to get even more out of it. But Madeline is more or less following a single character protagonist, Madeline, who has an unnamed mental illness that both her single or her now single mom is taking care of her and her brother, and she's really stressed out and worried about it. And then it doesn't seem like Madeline's in school anymore, but yet she keeps going to this kind of independent kind of avant-garde theater troupe to have something to do, something productive that she's able to focus her attention on. And so it kind of ends up having a triangle between her mom, and this kind of surrogate mother character played by the theater troupe kind of director. And it's a lot in the way it introduces you into the movie. It's very, I don't want to say hazy because it's not completely disorienting, but it's almost playful in the way that it intros, where there's one character who he finds out as a part of the troupe later is describing directly to the audience that you're about to experience the metaphor of being inside of a cat. And then we see subsequently who we find out is Madeline basically acting out being a cat all over her dining room table area. And that's how we're introduced into this world where we've kind of in this dreamlike mixed state. And without giving away too much of where it goes, I really appreciate it starting out in this playful mode, because where it allows space for us as the audience to connect with these very intense, kind of potentially abstract and difficult to connect to things like someone else's mental illness or subjectivity in that way, that it allows space for us. And when it gets really serious, it feels like it's led us into that space where she is finding a place for herself. And I think that's kind of where the title comes from. But that's my knee-jerk reaction. How's this movie sound to you, Jessica, after how long has it been since you've seen it now? A few weeks, months?
Yeah, it's been 2 weeks since I've seen it. But yeah, the beginning definitely sets the tone for the more surreal moments in the film, and I'm super sad to say that I am not a huge fan of Josephine Decker. I've seen another one of her films, and it just didn't really sit well with me. I feel like she likes, with her films, I think that she likes to use nature in a way that Malick uses nature to relate to spirituality. She uses nature to relate to sexuality. And sometimes it's effective and sometimes it's not. In her previous film, which I am going to try to say, even though I butchered it last time, Thou Wast Mild and Lovely.
Nice.
In that film, it was a little bit too exploitative for me. Like I didn't really like what she did with that. But with Madeline's Madeline, I felt like she could use that with a coming of age story. So a character who is coming of age, has a mental illness, but is also coming into her sexuality. And so she uses kind of like the animalistic nature of people to appeal to that idea. And I thought that that worked really well. There are parts of the film that worked well for me, but parts that didn't. And I think the one thing that was really effective was the mother-daughter relationship between Madeline and her mom, played by Miranda July, who did a really, really good job in that character. And you can see the tension between those two characters throughout the movie. And that is really, I think, like, I honestly feel like the mom is the antagonist in the film, because anytime she enters the room, Madeline, like, automatically, her demeanor changes. And there's even a scene where Madeline's acting for her acting troupe, and her mom's in the room, and she's acting as her mother.
Oh God, right.
And yeah, and that was like really, really hard to watch, and her mom just like bursts into tears and like runs out of the room. So I felt like all of that was very effective. I really didn't understand the "you are inside of the cat" metaphor. Like, after the movie was over, that was the thing that I was thinking about the most. And the only thing that I can think of is when you have a mental illness, it becomes a part of you, and you are kind of inside of your body, and you can't really control things. So like maybe Madeline feels like she is inside of the cat. She is not the cat itself because she can't control things. So I don't know what you took from that, Dylan.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, especially with the problems that I feel like we both felt then about Thou Wast Mild and Lovely, because there's like a thread that connects both of them, where at one point in that previous movie, she definitely just puts a POV shot of a cow in there. And it's just like, what are you doing, Josephine Decker? Why are we a cow all of a sudden? And I think that gets continued here, but in a way that feels more productive for the character as a person trying to be an actor and a person, like finding a space to, as you said before, like enact almost like an animal like quality. Like here, it keeps fixating on a turtle. It goes from a cat, but there's at one point where she definitely like, it goes into this dream space where she is dressed up as a turtle, and it's like a POV shot of the turtle. And I think it's just like a way to, or partly a way to get through some of that, or like find a space for yourself that you feel like you're in control by giving it up to this thing that you're obviously not. That seems like a confusing thing, but knowing that you're not a turtle, but finding a way to become a turtle as like a way of controlling all of that space, all of your behavior around it. And so I feel like that's kind of, especially as you say, that one scene with her mom acting in front of her mom, and where that leads to after with the theater director, and that like makeshift impromptu theater moment that I don't want to spoil, that kind of leads up to the final image of Madeline by herself, that really messed me up. So I don't want to spoil all that, have to be vague, but I just really want to point out real quick that I want to know how Josephine Decker and her ongoing collaboration with her cinematographer Ashley Connor works, because it's so like, I don't want to say ephemeral, but there's so much movement going on just about all the time. But it's not like shaky cam movement. It's just a constant sense of momentum or shifting, that having to figure out the choreography for not only the camera movement, but then the actors in it is really impressive to me. And I just want to point that out and have to look into that more because that seems very difficult to pull off. So anyway, I would recommend this. Hopefully it plays near you or at least has a week run, because it is something unique that I was not expecting. Even after watching 2 of her previous films, that Butter on the Latch and that Thou Wast Mild and Lovely, that I think this one brings together all the things that her and her cinematographer were playing with and made it real and not just like an exercise somehow. So anyway.
Yeah, I honestly feel like this is a good place to start with her filmography. I think it's the most accessible for like a wider audience. And then if you felt this movie and you could handle it, then you can probably move on to some of her other ones.
Cool. I mean, I would say check,
agree, for sure.
Keep an eye out for it showing up at your local theater, but it seems like it's kind of blowing and going and kind of not staying super long. So this might be one to keep an eye out for on Amazon or iTunes or something along that nature, or even Hulu.
Yeah, I think her other films are on Fandor right now.
Yeah, somewhere on streaming it might pop up. I know I was gonna say Hulu also has a really strong independent film selection on their website, so keep an eye out for it.
Sorry, just the last thing. I'm going to be pointing out the obvious here, but boy, this movie would not stand on its legs without the performance at the center of it by Helena Howard, which is like her film debut. I'm just going to point out the obvious that it just holds that movie together along with, as you said, Jessica, the mother character. It's very good. Sorry. Last thing.
Yes, she is so good. She is such a good lead.
Yep. Very good.
Jessica, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. You finally caught Support the Girls, which Andrew and I talked about a couple weeks ago and we're big fans of. What did you make of the film?
Yeah, I'm a little late to this party, so sorry everybody. But since you heard the dudes talk about this movie, I'm gonna come in and talk about this movie. So, Support the Girls is a comedy, and it centers around a sports bar called Double Whammies, which is basically like a Hooters. And it follows Lisa, who's played by Regina Hall, and she is the manager of these girls that work at this restaurant bar thing, and she's just trying to keep it together. Like, the movie opens on her crying, and it kind of just sets the tone there that you know it's gonna be an emotional ride. But like, I loved how just like quiet this film was, but like it obviously understood the characters that it was trying to portray. Like, I think Andrew Bujalski, all right, I think I said that right. I feel like he like legitimately studied this subject matter, like went to multiple places like this and saw these people, because these people feel like people that you have met in your lifetime. And I also think that Regina Hall's character Lisa is very well written, because she is having to balance, being a manager, but also being a caring mother for these girls. She feels like she has to nurture them and take care of them. She has a worker who can't find childcare. Her kid is sick, so she takes him to work. And Regina Hall, like, sits down and hangs out with the kid and talks to him. And so she's, like, in this corporate environment, but she's still trying to care for them and show them support. And I think that we've all kind of had a manager like that who was nice to us. But the really interesting thing about her character is that even though she's nurturing and she's nice, like, she's still going through these hardships herself. But at the end of the day, like, she still works for a corporation. She still has to get them to do their job. And I think that that part of her character is really interesting. But it's really cool because she begins the film with crying, and they end the film with like her and a couple of the girls screaming above a highway. So it's like if you work at a low paying job where you just have to show your boobs to get good tips, like you're gonna cry and you're gonna scream. And I felt like that was just a really good portrayal of like what life would be like if that's how you had to support yourself. So it's really, really, like, it really understands its subject matter, really cares about its characters. Haley Lou Richardson is so good in this movie. She plays a girl who's kind of ditzy, but she is very, very sweet. And my absolute favorite part in the film is whenever she, like, Regina Hall is like kicking the bar, like the brick outside, and she, like, Haley Lou Richardson pops out of the door with one of those like confetti poppers, and she like startles her, and just like she shouts like, "You're the best and we love you," which is just like the most supportive like thing that you can do for your coworker, but also super like funny. And I don't know, this movie is just like, it was a surprise for me. I really didn't think that I was going to like it as much as I did, and there was so much hype with people that I knew that were like, "Oh, this is such a great movie and it's such a feminist movie," but I didn't really get it until I watched it. But it is actually really, really good.
Sounds like a good recommendation.
Well, I know one thing Nathan mentioned in his review on the site was exactly what you were talking about. It captures the thin line between being, a friend and being a manager. And Regina Hall's character is so interesting in this film just because she is trying to thread that line almost as close to the line as she possibly can. Like, she so desperately wants to be kind of a lifeline and a recourse for all of these girls who she knows are at different points in their lives and are looking for different things. But at the same time, she does have to create some sort of structure around, because it is a work environment. And that straddling of that line is at times just so that's where a lot of empathy for her comes from, because you just feel so strongly empathetic for her, because she just wants to help these girls out, but at the same time she has to set some sort of boundary, some sort of line, and that's such a challenging position to be in.
Exactly. And I also think that this movie just like cinematically is beautiful. There are shots in it that just look amazing even though it's an ordinary space. Like when they're on the highway and the camera is kind of at like it's looking up at them and it has the sky in the background, like that shot is beautiful. Also, whenever Regina Hall is just sitting in a parking lot, it has her in the forefront, and she is in the forefront of the shot, and she is just like looking at a bird that is flying up in the sky, and you can kind of tell like she wishes that she were that bird, but she's trapped here, at this really sexist corporate environment where she just has to do her best.
Well, support the girls. It is on Amazon and iTunes and different streaming services. We've talked about it a bunch on this podcast. We highly recommend it, so please go check it out and support the girls. That's just what you got. That's what needs to happen, because you got to support the movie.
That's just what you have to do. You heard it from a girl, so you have to support the girls.
Been waiting. All right, I wanted to real quickly talk about, before we move on into part two, this week I watched 1927's Metropolis, which seems kind of like one of those very large movies that is on the list that is never really written down, but it's that list of movies you're supposed to tackle in order to be certified in some way in watching movies. But Metropolis, like I said, it came out in 1927, and it has a really interesting history because for a very long time, a lot of the movie was lost. And I watched the version that was on Fandor, and it gives you a little bit of a history lesson into where they found all of this lost footage. And I believe it was either Brazil or Argentina, they found all of these negatives and these clips of Metropolis and pieced it all together. And so the version that was restored in 2008 and 2010, not only is it just really in this pristine quality, but it also has added on the majority of the film that was lost. And there's still lost portions that you hit parts of the movie where it's not like title cards in the sense of what you're used to seeing in silent movies. It's more just title cards kind of telling you what action kind of took place, because you'll go from one scene and then they'll have the title card explaining all of the action, and then you'll go to the next scene and like at one point somebody has gotten into a fight, and so you go from this one scene into the next scene and this guy is like on the ground post fight and you're like, what happened? But thankfully there's like this title card going, yep, this thing happened and this guy came in here and they got into a fight, and you're like, okay.
That movie too, also with its intertitles, does that stylish thing with its intertitles. Instead of like a whatever for us bland now New Times Roman text or whatever, it's like has crazy font styles and like almost lightning exaggerations and things.
There's a lot of flourishments.
Someone's screaming now, and so
yeah, it has that kind of intertitle style similar to the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, where it's not just expressionist in its sets and its design. It also uses like the titles to kind of make you feel the voices at times, which is really cool. It's very effective. But the movie, so it's added on a lot of this extra footage, and it's a strange experience to watch because I watched it at home, and I was telling you guys before we started recording, there's parts of it where you're watching it and it's in this very pristine like 1080p condition. It looks as like clear as any movie that you would see today, and then it'll cut and it'll be the same sequence, like the same scenes taking place, but it'll cut from that pristineness to kind of scratchy, grainy film. It's just fun because you'll go from this amazing quality down to this very low quality. It kind of feels like at times the movie's like buffering and you're losing buffer at some points. But at the same time, it's one of those things that you take into account while you're watching Metropolis, that it's really a marvel and a miracle that you're able to watch so much of this movie when so much of it was lost for a very long time until very recently. But anyway, that was just a little primer for the movie. But Metropolis, it takes place in this very futuristic city. I mean, it's the inspiration for, if you've seen Blade Runner, if you've seen Cloud Atlas, just these massively it takes elements from Tim Burton's Batman movies. Like it just has this massive future modernism to it. And in this futuristic city, you have the working class, the workers. Fritz Lang, the director, has these incredible sequences early on in the film where the workers are marching to their jobs. And at one point, there's the one where the workers are leaving and the workers are going. They're all in the same demeanor with their heads kind of nodded down and just trudging forward. He also uses this like superimposition shots where they're kind of going side by side and almost diagonally, and it's almost a little avant-garde and disorienting, but it makes you just kind of get disoriented with just the motion of the 9 to 5 day-to-day minutia of work and how tiring that can be. It's a very different style of displaying that than something like Support the Girls, which is it's kind of funny to pair the two. But you have this working class who are it's very funny because they go and work on these machines, and it's not like you're at like a factory where there's a specific purpose that you're seeing the machines like that's what their purpose is. It's just kind of these weird contraptions that they're working in this kind of choreographed unison style that they're literally like moving clock hands and pushing things, and it's just this constant motion in unison that you look at it and you're like, this is not like accomplishing anything. Like, it doesn't look like these machines are actively doing a job, but that's just kind of what Lang lying is saying about the about the kind of capitalist class system. And so you have these working class. You also have the upper class, the city planners. You have this. You have the one character which I love. His name his name is Joe Friederson, and his son, poor kid, is named Feeder. So the dad's name is JOHFREDERSEN, and then his son is FREDER. So his son is literally just the last name without the SEN at the end of it, which I felt like is an awful last name because he's Friederson. But anyway, it's a whole German thing, I guess. I don't know. But Joe Friederson is kind of like the wizard, in Oz. He's just this figurehead that has created this giant futuristic city and is sitting on top of his ziggurat that he's created. And his son is enjoying the fancies of that, as he is in this and I forgot what the name is. It's like the city of something. He goes in this, it's like a jungle area, and it's just a jungle with these women, and he's literally frolicking around this jungle with fountains and food with different big-breasted women. It's so obnoxiously over the top, and
trying to be like some kind of Eden. But.
Yeah, it's so like blatantly Eden, but it's kind of entertaining, especially when it's cutting between grainy film and like really nice high quality. But while he's doing that and he's speaking with this one girl, the door is open, and this woman who we later learned is Maria bursts in with this crowd of children, and the crowd of children are all the children of the working class people, and she is showing the children what this Eden-like paradise is, and of course the guards come in and push everybody out, but Frieder is very taken with Maria. He's the actress Bridget Helm really does have this striking face, and she's very impressive. She plays multiple roles in this movie. And she's just so and each of them has this distinct personality. It's really a performance that sticks with you just because she's doing so many different things all in this one movie. But Frieder is just so taken with her, so he follows her down, where she's going. He follows down into the gallows where the people are working, and comes across all of this the machinery and the people doing the different jobs, and he's watching. There's this incredible expressionistic sequence where all of the workers are on this large wall, and you've probably seen it because it's a very famous scene, but they have the different kind of windows where the workers are working, and like I said, they're all working in unison, and there's kind of it reminds you of the sequence in The Gold Diggers of 1933 where all the dancers are in the different sections, and they're all kind of dancing at once, and it kind of creates this almost apartment window effect. But they have it doing that, but with these workers doing their job. And at one point, the one worker in the middle is not, I guess, doing his job to the best of his abilities, or is failing at what he's supposed to do, and it overheats the machine.
As in he passes out.
As in he passes out because he's overworked, and so he passes out, and the machine overheats, and when it overheats, Frieder is sitting there watching it, and the mist comes out, and the mist becomes this giant demonic head, and when the demonic head comes out, he starts visualizing like the workers who failed being led into this sacrificial head by these primitive beings, and they're being marched away, and then the new workers are coming in, and this incredible premonition that he has, and then of course it flows away, and he sees that they're just carrying the workers off on stretchers, and new workers are coming in and immediately doing the exact same job. So just to kind of move along, Frieder befriends this one employee of his father, who his father gets angry that the employee doesn't let him know on the the small inner workings of the what's going on in the down the down machinery world, and so he fires him, and so he befriends this worker and is like, you're gonna help me do whatever plan I have. He didn't really have a plan at that point, but he's like, you're gonna help me. And he goes down into this to where the machines are and where the workers are, and switches places with this one worker, and he's like, you go and live my life and then go and see this guy who's waiting for me, and I'm gonna do your job. And while he does the worker's job, he ends up going to the meeting where all of the other workers go to after their shift ends, and it's led by Maria, and she's leading them into a trying to connect the upper class in this lower class of workers, and what she is describing as the mediator, as this middle force who's going to kind of bring the two together. And of course, Frieder, as the son of the person who's in charge of this whole thing, sees himself as this mediator. And as the movie goes along, you're also introduced to this inventor character played by Rudolf Klein-Roeg, who appears in a lot of expressionistic films such as Dr. Caligari and Destiny and a number of others. He has this this deeply German expressionist face, and he plays this inventor who creates this machine person. And the machine person, they end up kidnapping Maria and using her likeness to create this machine person that is supposed to pretty much turn the workers against the ideals that they're kind of grasping onto, and create this inner revolt that is being orchestrated by the upper class, the inventor and Joe Friederson and those upper class people. And it's just this remarkably nuanced movie. Granted, it has 2.5 hours to break all of this down, but at the same time, it's a pretty swift moving 2.5 hours. I think that I didn't really check the time until about 2 hours in, and a lot of the 30 minutes additional are these scenes that they ended up, a lot of the stuff that they ended up adding on because they found it over time while they were restoring the movie. But it really is this marvel of a film. I really like. I think that Lang's M is just a pure masterpiece. It's such a incredible film and such a arresting, challenging movie. And I was unsure of Metropolis because it kind of has this large scale epic quality to it, but it really does live up to it. It's just it's wrestling with a lot of ideals that I think feel relevant today. Even though I don't necessarily like the way it kind of ends. I'll spoil it. It's like almost 100 years old at this point, but at the end, they're able to work it out, and Frieder is this kind of mediator, and it literally ends with like him bringing the kind of leader of the lower class workers and bringing his father and them shaking hands, and it has like this, in this society, the working class and the capitalists can all get, we can get together, because I forgot that there's the saying in the movie that they keep using where it's like, what is it? Something about you have the hands and the heart, or when the heads and the hands want to come together, they could, the way they can come together is through the heart, and like that's the whole like slogan of the movie. And I'm not sure that I feel like it all comes together in the end. It feels very like I didn't feel like it was satisfying that that's kind of the knot kind of way they brought this story together, but it's just so visually spectacular. It holds up as something that's still spellbinding today, just watching the structures that are made. This was a giant loss of in terms of box office when it came out in 1927, and really pushed Lang back. I know it was one of kind of the pushing off points. He made M after this. Like, this wasn't a he made M in 1931, a couple of years after this. This was an UFA film, and it's really funny because Metropolis is one of Hitler's favorite movies, and Goebbels just loved this movie and showed it to Hitler, and it just makes me, it's really hilarious that he loves this movie so much. It's kind of like the whole Trump Citizen Kane thing. Like, clearly they don't understand like what's happening in this movie. Hitler clearly did not get what Metropolis is saying, that he found this so fantastic. But I would recommend checking it out. It's on Fandor in full. It's a really incredible movie, and it's one of those, I feel like, that again is on this list that you're supposed to watch. But I don't know. I think it's compelling enough to be worth your time. Sitting there and watching it, because it's a I don't know. I found it very entertaining. Like I said, I was engaged for most of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, and I imagine too, if you're lucky to have a rep cinema that ends up playing it, that'd be good to see on a big screen, you'd imagine, right? Oh
yeah, no, it's just, like I said, it inspired so many of these different movies that you just kind of, it's one of those where it's like you kind of go, yeah, it was the inspiration. Then you watch it and you're just like, Jesus, it's so incredible. I mean, even not just even like the city sets, but just the kind of the more traditionally expressionistic sets that he has, whether it's the catacombs where Maria is having her meetings with the workers, or the house that the inventor lives in. Like, it's very different in terms of expressionistic style from like Caligari or Nosferatu, but it really has its own sense of architecture that's really interesting. I would recommend this, and if you haven't watched M, you should watch M. That's an incredible movie. It's really, really good, and it's yeah, that one's good too. I think that's on Filmstruck, but this one is on Fandor. So if you're looking, for it, definitely check out Metropolis. All right, well, we're gonna take a short break. We'll be back talking 2016 Certain Women after this.
Hello, Cinematary listeners. This is Andrew Swafford with an important message during this break in the show. Cinematary would like you to know that we do not want your money, and we don't want to place ads in the show at this time. That's not why we do this. We do it because we enjoy each other's company, and because we want to bring you our pure, unadulterated opinions on the world of cinema. However, there are a few things you can do to help out the show that we would greatly appreciate. Firstly, leave us a review on iTunes, preferably a positive one, because the algorithm gods tell us that reviews increase our podcast exposure. Secondly, send us a tweet at Cinematary, or better yet, send an email to cinematary@yahoo.com so that we can hear from you guys for a change. Maybe you think I'm an idiot for not liking Singing in the Rain, or maybe you have a suggestion of a movie that you really want to hear our opinion on. Regardless, let us know your thoughts, and we'll read them out and respond to them on future episodes of Cinematary. Finally, please share the show with friends and members of your family who you think would enjoy listening to and participating in our film discussions we bring to you guys every week. So to recap, review, send us your thoughts through Twitter and email, and share with your friends and family. We would truly appreciate it. Thanks for listening. Now let's get back to the show.
And we are back with part 2 of episode 214 of Cinematary. In this part, we will be talking about 2016 Certain Women as our conclusion to our Kelly Reichardt series. She wrote and directed this movie, and it stars Laura Dern, Michelle Williams, Kristen Stewart, Lily Gladstone, James LaGrosse, and Jared Harris. It's based on 3 short stories by Mail Malloy's collection, Half in Love and Both in or collections, Half in Love and Both Ways is the Only Way I Want It. The film follows 3 thinly connected stories about women living in an area of Montana. On connecting these women and their stories, Reichardt told Vox, "I wasn't really trying to connect them too strongly. It was just more like working women, not even just women, just people in this area," which allows for questions about relationships with strangers, different ways people live in community, or the family nucleus versus solitude, whether that solitude is just being alone in a bar or alone in your bedroom, and the complicated relationships you can have with a stranger, or the missed opportunities for a connection with a stranger. It's just kind of about people who brush up against each other. On whether or not Certain Women is a road movie in the same sense as her other films, Reichardt again told Vox, "They don't necessarily start out that way. They all end up just being about getting in your car and going from point A to point B, or in some cases walking from point A to point B. They're like about the bigger journey, but it's really about the small getting to, which is just sort of more what my own filmmaking has revealed to myself over the years. It does seem to be where the action is, as opposed to where you get to where the action should be. It's funny how your work reflects back on you. I spent a lot of time moving between the East Coast and the West Coast myself, just in a car and back and forth. Everything is apparently a road movie, as it turns out. It's a nation of cars. Everything does seem to turn out that way. I wasn't trying to make a road movie statement. It's just that everything ends up being that. I used to think everything was a Western, but now I think everything is a road movie." On working through an array of emotions with her characters, especially anger, Reichardt told Slant magazine, "When you're a woman, you find out when you're 20 that the system's not going to work. As soon as you get your first job, you realize you're not going to make as much as the less qualified dude. You're not going to wait until you're in your 50s to find out the system doesn't work for you." Same with the rancher character played by Lily Gladstone, the Native American woman. She just sort of takes her knocks on the chin. She doesn't have this anticipation of things working out her way. On the other hand, Fuller's been knocked in the head and he has an injury. I can feel some empathy for him because everybody's felt up against it before and trapped. When Jared Harris is pulling on that seatbelt in the car, that's his whole thing right there. It happened and Jared worked with it, and I'm just like, oh yeah, his whole struggle's right there in that seatbelt. Nothing's working for him. So yeah, I can find empathy with all of them. On relating to the women of the movie, Reichardt told Filmmaker magazine, "There are things to relate in all of them. There's so many things when you're working a film, or when you're making a film, you're kind of sort of hustling about asking people to give in so many ways. So I can relate to the Michelle Williams character. I can relate to Laura Dern's exhausted feeling. Anyone who works in academia or in film knows that feeling. And with Lily's character, just finding the stillness and peace of mind and a real connection with animals, I can relate to that also. I found them all really relatable." On Reichardt's movies, Kristen Stewart told the playlist, "What I really love about Kelly's movies is that they focus on these moments that occur in between the moments that we are used to highlighting in film. There's nothing redundant and derivative about her movies. They're all meditative. She commands that you stop thinking until it's over. I get so absorbed by her work. Other people really like to package and deliver stories and make sure that you can consume them in the weird way that they want you to. Hers aren't like that." On the film, the New York Times said that crush between Stewart and Gladstone's characters is the movie's strongest source of heat, and it has the effect of rendering the other parts of Certain Women a little chillier and smaller than they might otherwise have seemed. The subtlety of the film is both an accomplishment and a limitation. It's hard not to want more for these women and to wish you could see more of them. The Washington Post said, "In some ways, Certain Women feels like too little. The viewer wants more from each of these brief stories, and we instinctively crave some kind of cathartic confrontation or union toward the end. Instead, Reichardt lets her flawed, enigmatic heroines be, allowing them to keep struggling, persevering, and relishing what can sometimes pass for tiny victories. You know a filmmaker is in supreme command of her medium when what she creates feels less like a movie than a candid glimpse of ongoing lives that will continue to play out long after the lights have come on." Vox said, "Certain Women is so muted that some may miss what's special about it, but anyone paying close enough attention could see how intimately it captures the interior lives of some lonely Northwesterners." On that note, I figured for this movie, let's start by breaking down kind of each of the 3 stories. And the first story that we go to is Laura Dern's story. And her character is a lawyer who is working on this case for Jared Harris's character. Like I said before, he has been injured on the job, but he's not kind of getting the workman's comp that he really expected, and is frustrated by it. And so he, rather than listening to Laura Dern's character, who's been telling him one thing for, as she says, 30 times, he decides to have another meeting with a male lawyer who tells him the exact same thing, and kind of gets him to, I guess, a degree of acceptance before he has a holdup at the insurance company, I believe, with one of the night guards. That ends, there's police outside, and they have to send Laura Dern in to break the whole thing down. What did you make of her kind of storyline? Because I think, Kelly Reichardt said it best. Her character just has this exhausted feeling, and she has this great line where she's talking about how if she was she's told this guy this 30 times, and a man said it once, and he it got through to him, and how it would be so much easier if she just was a man for this, in this job. But yeah, what did you make of that storyline?
She's so patient with him, which I don't understand. She has this level of care for him that I really was like, he was really testing my patience throughout the whole entire film. I was just like, I don't understand why she's taking care of him. He was crying in her car and was just acting like a crazy person and wouldn't listen to her. And she was just, and even, at the end, she visits him when he's in prison. So she still feels a level of I need to be here for this person. And any other lawyer, she's his lawyer. There's a professional level there, but she kind of feels like she needs to have there's a personal level added to that. And I don't really feel like a male lawyer would be like that.
Yeah, to your point, that moment early on where he first shows up to the office for apparently the 30th time, and you can tell he has nowhere he needs to be, because he'll just stand there listening to the creaky door saying it's not plumbed right, and he's just like, this guy messed up, and it doesn't happen, but it feels like he's right about on the edge to try to fix that door before Laura Dern gives him the news that they're going to go to Billings to see get a second opinion about his case. But I think something that unfolds that made me connect more with his character is how you start out feeling, as you said, just amazed by Laura Dern's patience, but just seeing how much it seems like he got screwed out of more money. It was a thing that we only see the aftermath of all these events, so we don't exactly see him being told about his injury and the workers' comp that is going to come to him. And if you sign this document, this is all you're going to get, and you can't take us to court for it. And that moment really comes up later when he has the security guard and her basically held hostage for her to read the document to him as if he hasn't heard it 1,000 times. But in that moment for us, her getting to this memo to him saying that even though I've told you this 3 times, you did sign it away, so you just kind of at a loss. And so to the point where he was told by that male lawyer before, and now it's just sinking entirely onto him that there's nothing he can do. And that's where that impotent rage gets channeled into, with that hostage situation. And it turns almost into a late Western outlaw breakout thing for a half a second. And Laura Dern, she goes along with it. Yeah. Okay. I'll go act like I'm being a gun held on me. And then as soon as he scurries away trying to get out the round back, she's just he doesn't have a gun. He's just running away out back. He's unarmed, please. Just completely ready for the situation to be over. But right, that awkward moment where in the car, where before he starts crying, where he's just vaguely just flailing and threatening his wife and threatening to just kill a lot of people. Like, that's like his last resort. You're like, why? Stop. And she's just like, I can't have you be in this car saying these things. I am a lawyer. Lest you forget. She underplays that moment, which is great. But when that music comes on and he just collapses in tears, there's a deep, pathetic quality to him that, I'm not sure if those other stories that were in the middle between when this one officially ends and where it picks back up right at the end, I don't know if I feel like his kind of change of heart with her at the end would have felt so resonant to me. But just them like sharing a shake and him just like, basically begging, but like in the most underplayed way of like, just, it doesn't have to be a tome. Just send me a letter, whatever is on your mind. After him finding out his wife left him for another prisoner somewhere else. It's just, he becomes, even though it's all rough right up until the end, she somehow pulls off this very small moment between them that I'm kind of amazed about. But
well, he hits this moment where he finds some recognition with the system. It's kind of like what she's saying. Like, Laura Dern figured out the system's not working for her long before he found it out. And his character was really interesting to me because, kind of looking back last week with Night Moves, he feels like the deeply amateurish, almost level 1 version of Jesse Eisenberg's character in that one, where Jesse Eisenberg's character was just radicalized to this point where there was really no turning, there just wasn't any turning back for him. And you can kind of see that that testosterone, insecure male rage just festering inside of Jared Harris's character, and it doesn't have the radical motive as much as Jesse Eisenberg's, because even when he has this hold up, it's not like it's not well planned. He's holding up a stupid night guard in this building where there's nobody
from a Samoan royal family, which we find out.
He's 14th for the princeship or whatever. But yeah, it's not like he's doing some full scale hold up of like a place. It's just this one guy late at night at this at this building, and so it's just like he has to. It's just like this male concept of he has to like
do something.
He has to piss somewhere, and he's like I just gotta piss, and he decides to piss there. It's the whole penis thing, guys. Kelly Reichardt understands the idiocy of men very, very attunely. Like, that's what I've learned while watching all of these movies, and she understands, and she gets to a different level of it with that character. And so I just find it funny.
Yeah, I think this sequence, like, to your point about kind of him, it's clear how unplanned this all is, that it works out because of just kind of I don't want to say nonchalant, but like non-aggressive the police are in this situation, which is a whole can of worms. But at one point in the dialogue between like the sheriff and I guess one of his deputies, he like mentions like casually that this guy did some woodwork for him, and that there's like this previous relation to it that I think, undercuts a sense of threat that may not be given to other people if they were in said situation themselves. So it's
kind of like that, like, oh, it's just Bert, we know him, there's no real tension necessarily in this standoff. And so that's what kind of makes the whole I'm gonna go out the back and you go out the front kind of thing so comical, because she's like, okay, and you never really feel any tension. She just goes out there and goes, yeah, he's unarmed, he's in the back, and it's just real funny.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like the way it's filmed, like writ large throughout the whole sequence, that tension gets undercut. But like for her as a character, like hearing him at one point saying, "I'm going to let him let the security guard go, but I'm going to keep her here because she's my lawyer and I have a reason to kill her. That's probably not feels too great for Laura's character, to be fair. And I feel like the tension is still there, especially considering that outburst he had in the car before. But like overall, like there's not this pressing manic energy that like the editing gets tighter and tighter as if there's going to be an explosive moment. It does fizzle out, as you say.
But it is another example of there's more at stake for her than the guy who's there. You know, she's being given the bulletproof vest and everything, and there seems to be much more at stake for her than the guy. Let's move on next to the second story, which is centered around Michelle Williams' character. Her and her husband are building this second home outside of the city. And pretty much the crux of their story is that they're building this home and they are going to see this elderly gentleman who lives nearby who has the sandstone that they want to use. And they're trying to kind of negotiate that so that they can use that. But he seems to be kind of a fickle person who doesn't necessarily want to give up on stuff on his property very easily. It's such an interesting sequence. I saw it when I was doing research. A lot of reviews pointed out that they didn't really feel this part of the movie as strongly as the other two. It is a lot more listless, you know. It's just kind of, you're not 100% sure where like the story is kind of going, and it never feels like it has like this ABC ending to it kind of thing. It kind of feels very in motion constantly and not really ending, or at least giving us a satisfaction, you know, that it feels like there's an ending. But I also felt like the tension, and you get again this tension between having a woman trying to do this job compared to having a man do the job. And it's you have that conversation between the older gentleman and then Michelle Williams and her husband, and Michelle Williams kind of has the goal in place, and she's like, I just need your help because he trusts you more, because you can tell the older gentleman is just kind of brushing her off as much as possible, and her husband is not really
just brushing her off, but just staring at him while she's trying to talk to him. It's weird.
And he's not giving her much help. So yeah, what did you guys make what did you make of this one, Jessica? What did you think of the Michelle Williams storyline?
Well, it was definitely my least favorite out of all of them. So I agree with what everybody else was saying. But yeah, like I think that the key to this section is the conversation between her husband and the older man, because he doesn't even make eye contact with her really whenever she's talking, and she's leaning forward. She is trying to make eye contact with him, and he's like staring at the husband the entire time, who is in a very just relaxed pose and is like, oh no, we shouldn't press him too hard for this. And she's like, no, this is what we need for our home. Like, I'm trying to build a home for us, and this is what we need. And she is very determined to get what she wants, and her husband is just kind of like, it's fine. And I thought it was really interesting because whenever they walk outside of the house, I don't remember exactly what happens, but I think the older man says something about a bird, like what a bird is saying, and she kind of connects with him in a weird way, because she replies with what she thinks the bird is also saying. And I think it's really weird because in that moment he almost like starts to trust her a little bit, because she like connects with him about what a bird is saying. Like, it's really weird.
To that conversation again, that he's like the husband character is basically like sinking into the couch. That is almost like a puddle of unhelpfulness. And that there's this point where he like, as you say, Jessica, opens like this door for the guy to decline the offer, and he has this goofy look on his face as if he's helping. And then there's a reaction shot to Michelle Williams like, what the hell's your problem? We almost had this going, and then you're screwing me over. And then the scene right after that is this kind of a reflective moment in the car between the two, where she's like really worried that the old guy, Albert, doesn't understand what just happened and that they just kind of got one over on him, because he's like framing it like he's going to give it to him, but she's like, no, I want to pay you for this. Even though I don't know how much the stone costs, please just like let me give you something for this. And that's somewhere in the middle of that car ride. She's like, I almost don't know if this was worth it to get the sandstone from this guy for like a sense of an authentic part of the house, because when you look at that pile of stone, you're like, I'm not sure that's going to build a whole house for this family of three that looks like they probably have some money to build a big size house. And even the husband at one point is like, yeah, that's, I might build a wall for us in the house. And you're like, oh, okay. Well, glad this is happening then. So, right, Jessica, to your point of like this one kind of having a underwhelming feeling in part, just if nothing else, because the stakes are just kind of personal and low and just kind of it's not whimsical. This is a thing that Michelle Williams' character really wants. It's clear, but it's just for us to connect with her on this point is when like just about every character in this scene so far with Albert, the husband, and the crabby teenage character, just not having any part of Michelle Williams' world just about, it's like, it's really hard to want to stay in it, which is really sad.
Yeah, I even forgot that the teenage daughter was there. Like, she was terrible, and I just now like remembered that she was even a part of that, because she was just so snotty. But yeah, like, you can see in Michelle Williams' character, you can still see the uncertainty and the worriedness in her face whenever they start picking up the stone, and she kind of like makes eye contact with the old man as he's looking out the window. And that was just like a little bit heartbreaking, because he was staring at them, picking up the stone, and you could see in her face like she was also really like worried and uncertain about the whole situation.
Right. Like she's really excited. She's feeling it. She's like, yeah, this is going now. And like she sees him in the window as he's in, and she starts to like wave at him. But then there's that reaction shot to him and just like deep, empty space reflection of the sky in the window. And it's like he has now lost his sandstone. The only thing that apparently that him and his brother had plans for, maybe to add on to their house, maybe since like 1976, but it hasn't happened yet. So who's to say what's going to happen with the sandstone? So it's just bad, ambivalent feelings all around. Like this guy not wanting to give up his stuff, and just her feeling like she took something from this guy for a weekend house, right? Like they're not even from there really. They just kind of go there for the weekend. So it's a very strange, ambivalent situation.
And this is off topic, but so the guy that Laura Dern sleeps with at the beginning of the film,
yes, that's the same guy. Uh-huh.
Is that Michelle Williams' husband?
Yup. Right. We didn't bring that up when we were talking about the first story, but that's the scene we find both of them like having afternoon sex, not really, doing whatever. They're just having an affair. But she gets a phone call later from him saying like, I have my hands full with my family. Maybe we shouldn't do that. And she's right in the middle of Jared Harris getting out of the car, apparently having a fight with his wife, and coming up on the car is like, yo, you got your hands full, but I got this angry man about to come at me in this car. So I have to get off the phone. And she hangs up on him. But yeah, that's that kind of, right. It's so fragmented that you can forget that they're having an affair. And that, right.
There are tons of bearded men in this part of America, so who can tell who is the same person or not? I don't know.
I would also like to point out that Michelle Williams' husband is the owner in Support the Girls.
What?
So there's another connection we have.
Okay. He's also the fertilizer salesman in Night Moves, the movie guys talked about before, where he's the real kind of hesitant. No, I'm not about to sell you this fertilizer. It's the same character. Uh-huh.
All the connections. So the final story, which I think is generally everybody's favorite part when it comes to talking about this movie, is the Kristen Stewart, Lily Gladstone storyline. pretty much Lily Gladstone works on a ranch. She works with the horses, and just to kind of get ahead of the house, she's just driving around one day and sees all of these people congregating at this building. And she goes in, and it's this night course for school student law rights. And the law for education, and student rights, and it's being taught by this young lawyer played by, or actually a law student played by Kristen Stewart, who
I think she just graduated. I think that's the...
Okay, who has just graduated, so she's kind of a young lawyer. She has to drive 4 hours, there and 4 hours back home to do this job that she signed up for because nobody else really wanted to do it, and she doesn't know anything about education law or students' rights, and so the two kind of make this connection after the first class when Kristen Stewart, they go to the diner together and they're kind of talking, and Lily Gladstone's character admits, like, I didn't come to this class specifically, I just kind of wandered in, and they start this kind of very somewhat ambiguous bond, this sort of friendship. You can see that Lily Gladstone's character clearly has much more affection on her side than Kristen Stewart's character, who maybe it's who knows, it's less like she doesn't I think she seems to be so consumed in the hurricane that she's dealing with, in terms of her own life, that she just doesn't recognize what's really happening in this period of time. And so, later on, she learns that Kristen Stewart's character has quit the job and decided to stay back, and so Lily Gladstone drives all the way to the town where she works to find her. And I don't know, what did you guys make of this sweet kind of somewhat meet cute love crush story? Like, it was such a sweet story and just had this real heart to it that it wasn't that the other two stories were bad, but there was just something so endearing about it. What did you make of these two and their storyline?
Like, I don't know if it's cute for somebody to drive 4 hours and sleep in their truck and go to different law offices in this town to find you and to confront you and be like, oh, hey, I drove 4 hours because I just wanted to say bye forever. Like that, I don't know if that's cute.
That's kind of cute. Maybe, I feel like you would want somebody to do that, Jessica, is just drive 4 hours and be like, bye, and then leave.
No.
After confronting you in a parking lot.
I understand. I get it. Because it's really, I understand where Lily Gladstone's character is coming from. She's a woman who is isolated on a farm. She takes care of horses. She has a super cute corgi that, hangs out with her. But she's, by herself and she's alone. And she meets this person she is just, is so attracted, so infatuated with this person. And because it's Kristen Stewart, come on. But, and I get that. I understand that. But I don't know, their interactions are so quiet. They're so muted. They don't really talk about their feelings. Nobody is really, communicating what is going on. But, also, Lily Gladstone just pulls out this move of, I'm going to bring my horse, and I'm going to give you a ride on my horse to the diner. This is so smooth of me to do. And there are so many things that are just kind of, awkward to me, where if somebody were to do that to me, and we didn't talk about, I like you, this is a thing, I would be very weirded out with it. It was
I've never been on a horse before. How do I do this? How do I horse?
I would say that it is sweet, but at the same time, just kind of strange. And maybe that's on purpose because this is a woman who is isolated. She maybe she connects with, animals more than she does people. And so she might not be able to read the situation. She might not be able, to understand what is really happening, what the dynamic of this relationship really is. And so, like, you really feel for her. And I think that at the end of the film, when they just show her, she's still just doing her job. Like, she moves on, and there she is alone again. And I think you kind of really just like feel that loneliness in that moment of, like, she's back to her normal life. Like, that one spark of excitement is just gone for her again.
There's a couple of things just about, like, her character, Lily Gladstone's character specifically, which we never get a name for her character, right? It's just, she's a ranch hand. But there...
I think we get a name. Hold on. That seems weird to not get a name.
About it, and I can't remember.
Yeah, her name was Ranch
Come
Hand.
here, Ranch Hand.
Okay. Because we get that moment the first time Kristen Stewart...
Actually, her name is just Rancher, so I take that back.
Check.
It's the Rancher.
Yeah.
That's so rude.
That's so rude of you, movie. That first moment that Kristen Stewart walks in, that it's so demure or whatever, that she, like, writes her name Beth, but underlines it, like, a little bit, and it's like this tiny thing. But when they finally get to the diner, and, like, she's not eating anything, even though, especially when after she brings the horse and Stewart, like, offers her, like, a part of her sandwich that she doesn't eat it. But during that first trip, we see her after they, break away, after they all part ways, that she stops at a convenience store and eats a frozen sandwich that, like, she was hungry that whole goddamn time, but she was just so nervous that she couldn't eat anything. And it was just like, it was so much. I was like, oh my God, please. You're dying.
Yeah, like, Dylan, haven't you ever been on a date before where you were
wouldn't know that.
You were so nervous that you were like, I can't eat anything, and so you just like pick at your food?
Wouldn't know that feeling for anything.
Well, you derailed him. What did you do, Jessica? Come on.
You really threw me right off the bus.
Sorry, Dylan.
No, it's okay. I'm trying to, like, go ahead. Please, someone else talk. I got thrown off.
I think what's so first off, I love the scene that you mentioned where Kristen Stewart writes like Beth on the board and then underlines it, kind of going like, this is what a teacher would do, right?
Just learns as she goes.
You talked about I think, Jessica, you mentioned that there's not really any conversation. It's just kind of this silence, this silence. But there kind of is this, like, kind of, I wouldn't say like relationship, but I guess kind of trade-off that they kind of have, because Lily Gladstone's character is getting this kind of human company that she is not really given, and she really craves, clearly, that she's so used to just being isolated on this ranch. She doesn't even get a goddamn name. That's how isolated she is, and she's just there with the horses. And it seems like Kristen Stewart's character kind of just gets some sort of vent, because she talks about it. She has to drive all the way here for 4 hours, drive all the way back for 4 hours, then has to go and work and work for a number of days, and then do this whole thing again. And it kind of just works that she gets the vent, and Lily Gladstone's character is completely fine just being the sounding board. And there was just since there was such a little sliver of communication, there was a lack of communication on the structure of the relationship. And so I think that's what makes it so painful at the end, because maybe she doesn't, there's not that cliched scene of rejection where she's like in the car just like breaking down, but it kind of is sad just because it's like this moment of reaching out that she clearly has not really ever done. And it wasn't like Kristen Stewart was like, ew, why are you here? But it was just like, it was more just like kind of, what are you what are you doing here? Like, why would you show up? It's just more strange and
right. To your point that
it's almost like worse.
Talking at like cross purposes to each other, that she's venting, she's like a sounding board to it. They end up like half connecting because they ask each other questions about their life, but it's like clearly
it's more situationally.
Yeah, right. It would almost be small talk, but they're sitting there at a diner, like just sitting next to across each other, so they have to talk about something that, I mean, you find out a bit about Stuart's worry that she was only going to be selling shoes for a living as opposed to being a lawyer, and Gladstone's character breaking horses with her brothers for fun, and that's where she got the cast on her arm. But it's like they kind of reveal these small personal things that are like a start of something, but it's clear when the Stewart character doesn't show up that there was a misconnection there, right? That they were talking across from each other than more with each other. And I remember the point I was going to say, that as this sequence goes on and they keep showing up at the diner, they look more and more sleep deprived. So if for nothing else, trying to talk to somebody when you're that tired and to like have an engagement with somebody when you're that tired is a feat onto its own. So it's like, there's at one point where you can tell, or like it's Gladstone's character is like nearly falling asleep while Stewart's character is talking, and that's like she's just barely staying awake as it is. Maybe because she hasn't eaten dinner yet. Who's to say? But that moment when she creepily shows up at Livingston to go find her at her law office and sleep in her truck, that drive back where it's just slowly seeping in that she will not see this person again. And even if it is a sad misconnection, it was still a thing that happened. And so you get that kind of cathartic moment, as small as it is, right? That's like one of the few scenes where an actual score shows up, right? Like a non-diegetic music shows up, and it's like this swell that it's small and it's there and it hits. So, anyway, yep.
Any closing thoughts before we kind of wrap up?
That shot with the horse, that was something. There's like this, it was backlit and it was like this aura to both of them together. It was, if there was a meet cute, it'd be like, yeah, riding this horse, it's great. We're connecting.
And I watched this movie when I was on a plane, so I don't know like how good my sound quality was, but there is train in the background of the entire movie, right? Yeah.
It's kind of like a score in and of itself, right? This kind of ambient, constant noise. Not to be too whatever cliche to it, but it like that does end up connecting all of them together. Like, there's small points in the movie where all the characters kind of bump into each other in one like small insignificant ways, but definitely that sense of place is given by that train sound for sure. I mean, that it's the opening shot of the movie, right? Where the train is coming in to, I assume, Livingston, and then the rest of the movie goes from there. So it is kind of like this through line to the whole of it.
Yeah, I think my wrap-up point would just be, I think that all of these women are strong in their own way. They all have different parts to their personalities, but they're still dealing with their isolation in different ways. I think that all of them are isolated. There are people in their lives who don't understand them or what they're going through, but they're still trying to connect with other human beings, and they're still trying to make it in their environment. And I love that. Like, there are so few movies that could write so many good female characters. And
that's definitely, I kind of wanted to close just with an overarching point on Kelly Reichardt's filmography to this point, because I kind of watched in order, and I'm definitely
for the first time.
Yeah, for the first time, and I'm definitely on board with seeing where she goes next, because she just has this such a unique and important voice in terms of American film. Just the way that her films ruminate are so singular, and I really just love them so much. The Certain Women, I would say, is probably lower than like Wendy and Lucy and Meek's Cut Off and Old Joy, which I would say were probably my favorite 3 of her 6, but it's still one that I think has these small moments that make her her directing style and her filmmaking style so effective and so just incredible to take in. Like I think that she's capturing this sense of America that not many other filmmakers are able to capture, and she does it in a way that is so satisfying. But yeah, no, I've really enjoyed this series, and I think that people should definitely go and check out her work because she's something special.
For sure. Cosign.
All right, well, that will wrap up this episode of Cinematary. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Cinematary, on Twitter at handle @Cinematary, and on Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/Cinematary, where we post all the movies that we talked about in this episode. Next week, we will be kicking off our October horror series. It's always a fun one. We got a good, interesting, slate of films this year. We also have a very special event one. So our first one that will be coming out next week on Friday is 1971's Velvet Vampire. That one, it's gonna be it'll be our kickoff. I really have no idea other than that the vampire I'm hoping is just draped in velvet. I don't know. That's about my that's the extent of my knowledge on that.
Just made of velvet.
But the following week, our episode after that, we're going to be looking at 1982's Slumber Party Massacre. And the cool thing about that one is this is a big one for those in those people in Knoxville, is we are going to have our very first ever live podcast. We're going to be at Central Cinema. We will on October 5th at 10 p.m. They're going to show Slumber Party Massacre. There's going to be wear your pajamas, bling a blanket. It's going to be a whole slumber party theme. And then afterwards, we're going to have a live podcast. We're going to be talking about the movie. Dylan will be there with Andrew and Lydia and I. It's going to be a super fun time. Do not know how it's going to go or how the turnout will be. I have this deep, dark fear that it's going to be just us talking in a blank room in pajamas, and it's going to be like this very surreal moment. But yeah, we'll be in Knoxville for a live podcast. We'll probably do a stream of it as well. But that is going to be on October 5th. The episode will drop on the 12th. But Slumber Party Massacre live at Central Cinema. We'll probably have more information on the Cinematary site and Facebook page soon about that. Our next episode will be The Rage Carry 2, and we are going to be joined by Mike Thorne, who is also going to be talking a little bit about his film Twitter horror list, which is going to be coming live on the site at that point, and going to be something very interesting people are going to be looking forward to. Our next film for those big time Megan Fox fans, 2009's Jennifer's Body is going to be we're going to be talking about that the following week. We'll also have a recap of the Knoxville Horror Film Festival. I know Andrew and Jordan and Paige are going to be going to that, so that'll be a fun time. And then our final episode of the series is going to be 2016's Raw, the French film. I believe we've talked about it in passing on the podcast before. And
I wrote a review on Raw for Cinematary a while ago.
You did, yeah. So we've talked about it briefly before, but that will be our conclusion. So Velvet Vampire, Slumber Party Massacre, The Rage, Carrie 2, Jennifer's Body, and Raw for this year's horror slate. Should be exciting. Yeah, we'll have the list up tomorrow on Friday on cinematary.com. But please, if you're in the Knoxville area, please come to the Central Cinema event. It's going to be a lot of fun. But until next week, thank you guys for listening. We will see you next week.